Her 4 gold captain stripes gleamed under the terminal lights. But the gate agent's voice dripped with disdain. "Ma'am, that's a cute costume, but playing dress-up is illegal in a secure airport area. Leave now." The air in Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport hummed with the controlled chaos of a Monday morning. The scent of roasted coffee beans from a nearby kiosk mingled with the faint, clean smell of jet fuel, a perfume Captain Imani Blake had associated with home for the better part of a decade. Sunlight streamed through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of Concourse C, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and casting long shadows from the lines of passengers waiting patiently. The rhythmic click-clack of rolling suitcases on polished terrazzo floors was a familiar, comforting symphony. At 6:47 a.m., everything was exactly as it should be, until it wasn't. Imani stood at gate C-33, conducting her final pre-flight checks on her tablet. Her AuraJet Airlines uniform was immaculate, a sharply pressed jacket for gleaming gold stripes on each epaulette signifying her rank, and silver wings pinned precisely over her heart. Her hair was styled in neat, professional locks pulled back from her face. She was the picture of competence and authority. "Excuse me, ma'am." The voice was sharp, laced with an impatience that cut through the ambient noise. Imani looked up from her tablet into the face of a gate agent whose name tag read Karen Miller. Karen's lips were pursed into a thin, disapproving line, and her eyes, a pale, washed-out blue, scanned Imani's uniform with undisguised skepticism. "I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the secure crew area," Karen said, her voice loud enough to turn the heads of several nearby passengers. Imani blinked, a flicker of confusion crossing her features before her years of training in maintaining composure under pressure kicked in. She offered a polite, professional smile. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Captain Blake, assigned to AuraJet Flight 828 to Denver this morning." Karen let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Right, and I'm a Queen of England. Ma'am, that's a cute costume, but playing dress-up is illegal in a secure airport area. Leave now before I have to call security." The accusation, so public and so absurd, hung in the air. The low hum of the terminal seemed to fade. A businessman lowered his newspaper. A group of college students looked up from their phones, their expressions shifting from boredom to interest. One of them, a young woman with vibrant pink hair, subtly angled her phone to record. Across the gate area, Chloe Chun, a beauty vlogger known for her Get Ready With Me travel edition series, was live-streaming her foundation application. Her phone, propped up on her carry-on, caught the entire exchange. Oh, guys," she whispered to her viewers, her makeup brush frozen mid-air. "I think we got some drama brewing." The viewer count on her stream began to tick upward. Imani's smile tightened, but her voice remained steady, a calm island in the suddenly turbulent atmosphere. "I can assure you, this is not a costume. I am the pilot in command of this aircraft." Her gaze was direct, unwavering. She could feel the heat of dozens of eyes on her, the silent judgment of the crowd. Inside, a cold knot of anger and exhaustion began to form. She had spent thousands of hours in simulators, passed hundreds of exams, and dedicated her entire adult life to earning those 4 gold stripes. To have it all dismissed as a cute costume by a gate agent was a profound public violation. She took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing the emotional response down. This was not a confrontation to be won with anger, but with unshakable professionalism. "I need you to show me some identification." "Real identification," Karen Miller demanded, crossing her arms as if daring Imani to produce something fraudulent. The crowd was growing, a semicircle of curious onlookers drawn by the scent of conflict. Moving with deliberate slowness to avoid any perception of aggression, Imani reached into the inner pocket of her uniform jacket. She first produced her FAA pilot's license. It wasn't just a piece of plastic, it was a testament to her career. The laminated card bore the holographic eagle seal of the Department of Homeland Security, shimmering under the fluorescent lights. Her photograph, professional and serious, was next to a list of her type ratings, the specific aircraft she was certified to fly. She placed it on the counter. Here is my federal pilot's license. Karen picked it up, holding it between two fingers as if it were contaminated. She squinted at it, then held it up to the light. The plastic feels cheap, she announced to the audience. You could buy these online for $20. I've seen better fakes. She tossed it back onto the counter with a dismissive flick of her wrist. Chloe Chen's live stream was now capturing every detail. Are you all seeing this? She whispered in her phone. She just threw the pilot's license down. The disrespect is unreal. Her viewer count jumped past 1,000. Comments flooded the screen. That's a federal document. And this is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Imani's jaw clenched, but her voice remained a carefully controlled monotone. She retrieved her license and then pulled out her AuraJet employee ID. The card featured the airline's elegant, swooping logo in embossed silver, her photo, and a thick, shimmering magnetic stripe. Her employee number, AJB 8824, was clearly printed below her name. And this is my company-issued identification, she said, sliding it across the counter. Karen barely glanced at it. Anyone with a decent printer can make one of these. At that moment, First Officer Liam Evans, a young, earnest pilot with a perpetually cheerful demeanor, arrived at the crew entrance, rolling his flight bag. He saw Imani and his face lit up. Morning, Captain. Ready to get this bird in the air. Then he took in the scene. The tense standoff, the crowd, Karen's hostile posture. His smile vanished. Captain Blake, he said, striding forward with confidence. Is there a problem here? Karen whirled on him. Oh, so you're not it too? What is this, some kind of elaborate scam to get a free flight? Liam's jaw dropped. Scam? Karen, what on earth are you talking about? This is Captain Imani Blake. She's been my captain for the last 6 months. We just flew the transatlantic route to London together last week. I don't know what kind of game you two are playing. Karen's voice rose, becoming shrill. But I'm not falling for it. I've seen these sophisticated schemes before. You're probably trying to get into the cockpit to do something. Imani decided to make one final attempt with physical evidence. She placed her carbon fiber flight case on the counter and opened it. The case, a sleek, modern piece of equipment, was meticulously organized. She took out her flight manual, a thick binder filled with technical specifications. Then came the aviation charts for the Denver route, covered in her own precise annotations. Finally, she produced her logbook, its pages filled with thousands of hours of flight time, each entry a record of a journey safely completed. Here is my route study for today. Here are the current weather printouts for Denver International. And here, she said, her voice low and firm, is my logbook showing over 6,000 flight hours. As she laid out the documents, a small, brushed metal badge attached to the interior of the flight case lid caught the light. It was unobtrusive, easily missed, but the words were clear, Board Oversight Committee. Just as the standoff reached a new level of absurdity, a man in a slightly too tight manager's uniform bustled through the crew entrance. His name tag identified him as Mark Jenkins, Gate Operations Manager. He had the air of a man who believed his authority was absolute and his judgment infallible. He didn't assess the situation. He arrived with a preformed conclusion. "What's all this commotion, Miller?" he asked, his eyes immediately landing on Imani, his expression a mixture of annoyance and suspicion. "Thank goodness you're here, Mark," Karen said, her voice filled with theatrical relief. "This woman is impersonating a pilot. She has a whole accomplice with her," she added, gesturing dismissively at Liam. Jenkins looked Imani up and down, his gaze lingering on her face before flicking over her uniform with a critical eye. He didn't ask for her credentials. He didn't consult a crew manifest. He simply made a decision. "Ma'am," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Whatever your story is, this is a federally secured area. My responsibility is to eliminate any and all potential threats. I'm going to need you to leave." Now, the word threat was a deliberate escalation. It transformed a dispute over identity into a matter of airport security, of potential terrorism. The crowd murmured, a wave of unease rippling through the onlookers. At that moment, lead flight attendant Isabella Rossi arrived, her rolling bag clicking smartly on the floor. An experienced, no-nonsense veteran of the airline, She took in the scene in an instant. Imani, calm but resolute. Liam, looking flabbergasted. Jenkins and Miller, puffed up with self-importance. And the crowd of passengers, phones held aloft like digital torches. "What is going on here?" Isabella asked, her voice quiet but firm as she addressed Jenkins. "Mark, this is Captain Blake. We're scheduled to fly together." Jenkins turned his dismissive gaze on her. "Rossi, your job is to serve drinks and ensure the cabin is secure. My job is to ensure the gate is secure. Do your job, and let me do mine. Or AuraJet would be more than happy to find someone else to take your place." The threat was blatant, a raw exercise of power designed to silence dissent. Isabella's face paled slightly, but she held his gaze, her loyalty to her captain warring with the instinct for self-preservation. Chloe Chin's live stream was now a torrent of furious comments. Her viewer count surged past 5,000. He just threatened her job for telling the truth. One comment read, "This is a PR nightmare for AuraJet." Jenkins, emboldened by his perceived victory over Isabella, turned his attention back to Imani. He puffed out his chest. "This is no longer a simple matter of trespassing. This is now a security incident. I am officially detaining you for questioning." He reached for his radio, his movements slow and dramatic, playing to the crowd. He was no longer a gate manager. In his mind, he was a frontline defender of national security, and Imani was his suspect. The absurdity of the situation had morphed into something far more dangerous. Imani knew she had to de-escalate, but she also knew she could not and would not back down. Her career, her reputation, and a fundamental principle of justice were on the line. "You're detaining a senior captain?" Liam Evans stepped forward, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that she's an unauthorized individual in a secure area, attempting to gain access to an aircraft under false pretenses," Jenkins retorted, his hand hovering over his radio. "That's grounds enough for the TSA and half the alphabet soup of federal agencies to get involved." Before he could make the call, 2 airport police officers approached. The senior officer, a man with graying temples and weary eyes, had a nameplate that read Davis. His partner, much younger and visibly on edge, was Reed. "We got a call about a disturbance," Officer Davis said, his calm, methodical gaze sweeping over the scene. He looked at Imani's uniform, at the documents on the counter, and then at Jenkins. "What seems to be the problem, Mark?" "This woman is an imposter, Davis," Jenkins said with an air of great importance. "She has fake documents and is refusing to leave the secure area." Officer Davis ignored him and addressed Imani directly, his tone respectful. "Ma'am, could I see your identification, please?" Imani handed him her pilot's license and employee ID. Unlike Karen, Officer Davis examined them with professional scrutiny. He tilted the license under the light, checking the holographic federal watermark. He ran his thumb over the microprinting. "Mark," he said, handing the cards back to Imani, "the federal watermarks and microlettering on this license are correct. I've been doing this for 20 years. This is a legitimate FAA license." Jenkins snatched the license from Imani's hand before she could retrieve it. High-end forgeries can fool anyone. The technology is incredible these days. "You can't be too careful. You're making a colossal mistake," Liam warned, his voice low. At that moment, Imani decided to escalate through the proper channels. She pulled out her phone, found the number for the chief of flight operations, and pressed call. The phone was answered on the second ring. Rostova, a crisp voice with a distinct Eastern European accent, answered. "Captain Rostova, this is Captain Blake," Imani said calmly. "I'm at gate C-33 for flight 828. There appears to be a credentialing issue with the ground staff." "Credentialing issue?" Captain Eva Rostova's voice sharpened. "What issue?" "You're the pilot in command. I signed off on the assignment myself." Jenkins, seeing the phone, scoffed. "Let me talk to her boss," he said, making air quotes with his fingers. "Captain Rostova, the gate operations manager would like a word," Imani said, holding the phone out. Jenkins grabbed it. "This is Mark Jenkins, gate manager." "Who is this?" The voice that erupted from the phone was so loud and filled with such icy fury that everyone within a 15-foot radius could hear it. Mr. Jenkins, this is Captain Eva Rostova, Chief of Flight Operations for this airline. Are you insane? Captain Blake has more flight hours on the Boeing 787 than you have hours working in this entire airport. You will apologize to her, escort her to her aircraft, and then you will report to my office at 0900 to explain why you are still employed. Is that clear? A dead silence followed. Jenkins' face had turned a blotchy red. He stood frozen, holding the phone, but his ego, now publicly shattered, refused to surrender. He handed the phone back to Imani and turned to the crowd. A very convincing performance, he announced, his voice trembling slightly. But it proves nothing. That could have been another accomplice on the phone. Voice-changing software is very sophisticated these days. Officer Davis stared at him, his expression one of pure disbelief. The last line of reasonable authority had not just bent, it had snapped. While Mark Jenkins was busy digging his own professional grave, Imani remained a pillar of calm at the center of the swirling chaos. She took her phone back, her expression unreadable. Her gaze drifted to her watch, a Breitling Navitimer, its complex dial a testament to the precision and calculation required of her profession. She noted the time, 7:03 a.m. Everything was proceeding, unfortunately, exactly on schedule. She discreetly navigated to a contact on her phone, labeled Simply Director, and placed a call. She turned slightly away from the group, her voice low and measured, but Chloe Chin's live stream, now boasting over 15,000 viewers, had its microphone sensitivity turned to maximum. Fragments of the conversation were captured. Yes, the incident is being thoroughly documented in real time. It perfectly aligns with our projections on systemic vulnerabilities. The evidence for the board presentation will be compelling. The livestream comments exploded with speculation. Who is she talking to? Board presentation. OMG, she's not just a pilot. This is getting good. As she ended the call, the flash of emergency vehicle lights pulsed through the terminal windows. A van with the Action News ATL logo emblazoned on its side pulled up to the curb. A reporter, a determined-looking woman named Amanda Foster, and her cameraman were already rushing through the sliding glass doors, drawn by the social media wildfire Chloe's stream had ignited. Jenkins saw the news crew and a new wave of panic washed over his face. Everyone needs to disperse immediately, he yelled, waving his arms frantically. This is a secure area, not a media event. But it was too late. Amanda Foster's practiced eyes scanned the scene and immediately locked onto the key players. The composed black woman in a captain's uniform, the flustered manager, the defiant co-pilot, and the sea of passengers with their phones out. This is Amanda Foster, reporting live for Action News ATL from Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, she said, speaking in her microphone as the camera light flickered on. We're witnessing a developing situation that appears to involve allegations of discrimination against an AuraJet pilot. For the first time since the ordeal began, a small, almost imperceptible smile touched Imani's lips. She glanced at her Breitling again. Perfect timing, she murmured to herself. With a quiet click, she opened her carbon fiber flight case. This time, she didn't remove any pilot-related documents. Instead, the camera and Chloe's live stream zoomed in on the contents. Nestled inside was a military-grade, encrypted tablet, and beside it, a thick, professionally bound report. The cover was a stark, corporate red, and the title, printed in bold, white letters, was unmistakable. Project Ascend, Confidential Internal Operations Audit. The pieces were all in place. The audience was assembled. The real performance was about to begin. The terminal, which had been a cacophony of murmurs, camera clicks, and frantic whispers, fell into a sudden, profound silence. The only sounds were the distant hum of the airport's ventilation system and the whir of the news camera. All eyes were on Captain Imani Blake and the open flight case that seemed to hold more secrets than a government archive. Imani's voice, when she spoke, was not loud, but it cut through the silence with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Mr. Jenkins, Ms. Miller, She addressed them directly, her gaze level and unflinching. I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding, not just about my credentials, but about my entire purpose here this morning. She reached into the case and lifted out a single, heavy stock document. It wasn't a letter. It was a formal notice bearing the embossed corporate seal of AuraJet. The light caught the intricate, raised design. I am Captain Imani Blake. I have been a pilot with AuraJet for 8 years and a captain for 4. She began, her tone calm and factual, reciting the details they had so vehemently rejected. That is all true. However, what is also true is that as of 6 a.m. this morning, my role within this company has changed. She held up the document for all to see. The news camera zoomed in, capturing the bold heading. Effective immediately, I am the new Vice President of Flight Operations for the Eastern Seaboard. The words dropped into the silence like a boulder into a still pond. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Mark Jenkins' face, already blotchy and red, drained of all color, leaving it a pasty, sickly white. Karen Miller's jaw hung open, a silent O of disbelief. Liam Evans and Isabella Rossi exchanged a look of pure, unadulterated shock. On Chloe Chin's livestream, the comment section became a waterfall of capital letters and exclamation points. She's the VP. Plot twist of the decade. They are so fired. The viewer count rocketed past 25,000. That's not possible. Jenkins stammered, his voice a hoarse whisper. His entire world, built on the shaky foundation of his own petty authority, was crumbling around him. Imani didn't offer a verbal rebuttal. Instead, she simply tilted the document forward. It was a board resolution notice, signed in ink by every member of the AuraJet Board of Directors, including its CEO, Julian Croft. The resolution was clear, outlining her new scope of authority. Operational oversight for all airports from Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta to JFK in New York. Her promotion wasn't just a step up, it was a quantum leap. And Jenkins and Miller had just spent the last 20 minutes publicly humiliating and threatening their new boss. The weight of their catastrophic misjudgment settled upon them, heavy and suffocating. Imani's expression remained neutral, but her eyes held the cold, hard glint of accountability. The pilot they had tried to ground was, in fact, the very person who now controlled their flight path. My first official duty in my new role, Imani continued, her voice maintaining its unervingly calm cadence, was to conduct an unannounced, real-world assessment of our gate operations and crew treatment protocols. I must say, the results have been illuminating. She gestured gracefully towards Chloe Chin's phone, which was still broadcasting live. Ms. Chin's live stream has provided an excellent, unbiased, real-time record of this assessment. Then she gestured to the Action News ATL camera, as has the local news coverage. Finally, she reached in her jacket pocket and produced a small, discreet audio recorder, its red light blinking steadily. And of course, I have been documenting every word, every threat, and every violation of company policy since 6:47 a.m. The triple threat of evidence, social media, mainstream news, and a personal recording, formed an inescapable cage of facts. There would be no he said, she said. There was only the raw, unfiltered truth, witnessed by tens of thousands of people. Imani then picked up the encrypted, military-grade tablet from her flight case. With a few taps, the screen came to life, displaying a dynamic, real-time crisis dashboard. She turned the screen so both Jenkins and the news camera could see it clearly. The display was a symphony of catastrophic data points. A stock ticker for AuraJet, AJX, showed a plummeting line, glowing a furious red, minus 2.8%. Beside it, a box labeled market cap erosion displayed a number that was ticking upwards with terrifying speed, minus $950 million. Another graph showed social media sentiment, with a massive spike into the negative territory, labeled plus 1,200% negative mentions. And at the top of the screen, a trending topics list showed hashtag AuraJet discrimination as the #2 trending topic in the United States. This, Imani said, tapping the screen, is the tangible cost of your actions. Mr. Jenkins, as a 15-year employee, I assume you have a 401k with a significant amount of company stock. I invite you to watch, in real time, as your personal retirement savings evaporate because of your professional judgment this morning. The attack was devastatingly precise. It wasn't just about corporate losses, it was personal. She had connected his public arrogance directly to his private financial pain. Jenkins looked at the screen, his eyes wide with horror. He wasn't just losing his job, he was losing his future. Karen Miller, who had been frozen in silence, finally found her voice. You set us up, she accused, her voice trembling. Imani's gaze shifted to her, cold and analytical. No, Ms. Miller. I presented you with a standard situation. A uniformed, credentialed pilot reporting for duty. You and Mr. Jenkins created this case study all on your own. My report to the board was originally about theoretical vulnerabilities. You have graciously provided a practical and very public demonstration. The crisis dashboard beeped and the market cap erosion number ticked over to minus $980 million. The judgment wasn't just coming. It was being broadcast live, in real time, and priced in by Wall Street. As the financial and public relations disaster unfolded in real time on the tablet screen, a man in a sharp, dark suit and a discreet earpiece materialized at the edge of the crowd. He moved with an efficiency that spoke of extensive training, parting the onlookers like a ship through water. He approached Imani, his eyes scanning the area for any potential threats. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and professional. "Executive protection. Mr. Croft would like a word." He held out a sleek, encrypted satellite phone. This was not a standard company cell. This was the kind of device used for communications that could not, under any circumstances, be compromised. Imani took the phone. "Julian," she said, her tone shifting to one of peer-to-peer familiarity. The casual use of a CEO's first name sent another shockwave through the assembled crowd. A video feed flickered to life on the tablet she was still holding. The face of Julian Croft, the CEO of AuraJet Airlines, appeared. He was in the corporate boardroom, the company's logo visible on the wall behind him. His expression was grim, a mask of controlled fury. The news camera and Chloe's live stream immediately zoomed in, capturing the unprecedented scene. A corporate crisis meeting taking place live on the floor of the airport. Imani, the CEO's voice was crisp, broadcast clearly from the tablet speakers. The board is watching the live feeds. The project, Ascend field test, appears to have been even more successful than we anticipated. The word successful was laced with bitter irony. The data confirms our worst-case hypotheses, Julian, Imani replied, her voice all business. "I see that," Croft said, his eyes flicking to the side, presumably at a screen showing the same catastrophic numbers Imani was displaying. "The board has just concluded an emergency vote. You have our full and unconditional support. As per the pre-approved contingency plan, initiate the cleansing protocol." Cleansing protocol. The phrase, cold and clinical, hung in the air with chilling finality. It wasn't about firing a couple of employees. It sounded like a systemic purge, a planned, top-down restructuring of the company's culture. This wasn't a reaction to a crisis. This was the activation of a long-planned revolution. Mark Jenkins stumbled back a step, his face ashen. Karen Miller looked like she was about to be physically ill. They weren't just rogue employees who had made a mistake. They were the first casualties of a new corporate war they hadn't even known was being waged. "Understood," Julian Imani said. "Protocol initiated." She ended the call and handed the satellite phone back to the executive protection officer, who melted back into the crowd as silently as he had appeared. She then turned her attention back to Jenkins and Miller, her face devoid of emotion. The time for assessment was over. The time for execution had begun. With the CEO's mandate delivered, Imani's demeanor shifted from that of an observer to an executioner. She was no longer just presenting data. She was passing sentence. "Mr. Jenkins, Ms. Miller," she began, her voice leaving no room for negotiation. Let me be perfectly clear about your current situation, not just with the company, but from a legal standpoint. She swiped the tablet screen, dismissing the crisis dashboard. A new page appeared, filled with dense legal text. She highlighted a section with her finger. Federal Aviation Regulation Part 121 explicitly outlines the required standards for crew member treatment and anti-discrimination protocols. The FAA does not take violations lightly. The civil penalties can be substantial. She swiped again. Furthermore, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 makes what you did here this morning illegal. Given the amplification, she said, gesturing to the cameras and the sea of phones, the punitive damages in a civil suit would be significant. Based on recent precedent in cases with this level of public visibility, legal counsel projects a potential liability of well over 7 figures per plaintiff. The number hung in the air, an unimaginable sum. It represented not just their jobs, but their homes, their savings, their entire financial existence. But that is the company's liability, she continued, her gaze sharpening. There is also your personal liability for intentional infliction of emotional distress and defamation. My legal team is already reviewing the footage. She paused, letting the full weight of their predicament sink in. They were trapped, exposed, with no viable defense. However, she said, her tone shifting slightly, the board has authorized me to offer you a path forward. It is a one-time offer, and you have 120 seconds to decide. She reached into her flight case and produced a folder. From it, she pulled out 2 documents and 2 expensive-looking pens. This is a transitional separation agreement, she explained, placing a document in front of each of them on the counter. It stipulates your immediate and voluntary resignation from AuraJet, effective immediately. In exchange for your signature, the company will provide a standard severance package. More importantly, the agreement includes a clause where AuraJet assumes all legal and financial liability for this incident, shielding you from personal bankruptcy. It was a masterstroke, not a punishment, but a transactional escape. The agreement also contains a strict non-disclosure and non-disparagement clause. You will admit no wrongdoing, but you will acknowledge a violation of company policy. You will walk away from this company, and you will never speak of it again. She placed the pens on top of the documents. Your alternative is immediate termination for cause. No severance, no legal protection. You will face the full force of the FAA investigation, the Department of Transportation inquiry, and our corporate legal team's civil action against you personally. You have 110 seconds left to choose. The ultimatum was brutal in its clarity. Financial ruin and public disgrace on one side, a quiet, anonymous exit on the other. The choice was theirs, but it wasn't really a choice at all. The 120 seconds ticked by in agonizing silence. The only sound was the frantic typing of Chloe Chen's fingers as she relayed the ultimatum to her breathless audience. Finally, with a shuddering sigh that seemed to drain all the fight from her body, Karen Miller picked up the pen. Her signature was a spidery, hesitant scrawl. 11 years at the airline, gone with a flick of the wrist. Mark Jenkins watched her, his face a mask of defeated resignation. He picked up his pen and signed, his hand shaking so badly that his name was barely legible. 2 careers, extinguished in the harsh glare of the terminal lights. Imani took the signed agreements, reviewed them, and placed them neatly back in her folder without a word of triumph. Her victory was not in their defeat, but in what came next. As if on cue, her tablet chimed. The screen lit up with an incoming video conference call from the AuraJet boardroom. She answered, and the faces of the 12 board members, somber and resolute, filled the screen. Behind them, CEO Julian Croft stood, arms crossed. The scene was surreal, a live, public board meeting conducted from a gate in the busiest airport in the world. Chloe's live stream, now with over 50,000 viewers, captured the entire proceeding. The resignations have been accepted, Imani reported, holding up the signed documents for the camera on her tablet. Phase 1 is complete. Proceed with Phase 2, Madam Vice President, the chairman of the board instructed, his voice grave. Imani nodded and turned her attention to the assembled crowd, the news cameras, and the thousands watching online. She was no longer just addressing her board. She was addressing the world. Effective immediately, AuraJet is launching Project Dignity, she announced, her voice ringing with authority. This is not a PR campaign. This is a fundamental, top-to-bottom overhaul of our corporate culture and operational protocols. She began to outline the key pillars of the initiative. First, AuraJet is establishing the AuraJet Wings of Equity Fund, a $50 million fund to compensate passengers and employees who have been victims of discrimination. Claims will be adjudicated by a fully independent third-party panel. A wave of murmurs and applause swept through the crowd. Second, all customer-facing personnel, from gate agents to pilots, will undergo mandatory, comprehensive unconscious bias and de-escalation training, effective immediately. Completion will be required for continued employment. Third, she continued, swiping on her tablet to show a demo video, we are deploying a new AI-powered monitoring system at all gate areas. This system will analyze audio and body language for indicators of potential conflict or bias, triggering an immediate alert for a specially trained intervention supervisor to respond before a situation escalates. The sheer scope and technological sophistication of the plan were breathtaking. This wasn't a reactive apology. It was a proactive, systemic reinvention of how an airline interacts with the public. The dawn of reform was breaking, not in a quiet boardroom, but live in front of the entire world. The announcements continued, each one a hammer blow against the old way of doing business. Imani was not just cleaning house. She was redesigning the entire structure from the foundation up. Furthermore, she declared, her voice resonating with the weight of the board's authority behind her, I am announcing the immediate creation of a new C-suite position, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. This officer will report directly to the CEO and will have veto power over any policy that does not meet our new standards of equity. I am pleased to announce that Dr. Alana Washington, formerly the chief litigator for the ACLU, has accepted this position effective today. The appointment of a figure with such a formidable background in civil rights was a clear signal. This was not corporate window dressing. Finally, AuraJet is partnering with two of the city's most prestigious institutions, Spelman College and Morehouse College, she said, her gaze sweeping over the diverse faces in the crowd. We are committing to 100 full-ride aviation scholarships annually for students from underrepresented communities. We will not just demand a more inclusive culture. We will actively build a more inclusive pipeline of talent. A roar of genuine, heartfelt applause erupted from the passengers. It was a response not just to the specific policies, but to the profound sense of justice being delivered in real time. With her announcements complete, Imani's role in the public theater was coming to an end. The operational phase was beginning. She turned to Liam Evans, who had watched the entire saga unfold with a look of stunned awe. She unpinned the captain's insignia from her epaulets, the 4 gold stripes she had defended so fiercely just an hour before. Then, in a gesture of profound symbolism, she handed them to him. First Officer Evans, she said, her voice softening for the first time. You are now the acting captain for Flight 828. Get your passengers to Denver safely. She then took her own captain's hat from her flight case and placed it firmly on his head. From this day forward, the flight deck of an AuraJet aircraft is earned by merit and character alone. Nothing else matters. Liam, his eyes wide, could only nod, speechless. Imani Blake then closed her carbon fiber flight case. The small, metal badge of the board oversight committee disappeared from view. She gave a final, brief nod to the news cameras and the stunned crowd. Now, if you'll excuse me, she said, her voice once again that of a corporate executive. I have a board meeting to attend. She turned and walked away from the gate, not towards an aircraft, but towards the executive transport that had been dispatched to take her to headquarters. She left behind a shattered status quo and the indelible image of a powerful, resolute leader who had just single-handedly changed the course of an entire industry. 6 months later, the Imani effect had become a business school case study. The incident at Hartsfield-Jackson had sent shockwaves through the entire aviation industry. Within weeks, every major U.S. carrier had announced its own version of Project Dignity, scrambling to implement new training protocols and monitoring systems, terrified of being the next viral cautionary tale. At gate C-33, a small, elegant bronze plaque was now affixed to the wall. It read, "On this site, Project Dignity was launched. AuraJet Airlines. Equity in the air, respect on the ground." Chloe Chin stood before the plaque, filming a follow-up for her now massively expanded audience. 6 months ago, she said softly in her camera, "We witnessed an act of injustice. But more importantly, we witnessed an act of profound, systemic change. It wasn't just about one woman's dignity. It was about building a system that protects everyone's." The changes were tangible. AuraJet's AI monitoring system had successfully de-escalated over 200 potential incidents before they became confrontations. The Wings of Equity Fund had processed dozens of claims, quietly delivering justice to those who had previously suffered in silence. The first class of scholarship recipients from Spelman and Morehouse had begun their pilot training. The lives of those at the center of the storm had also been irrevocably altered. Karen Miller, after a period of deep reflection, enrolled in a community college program and became a certified corporate trainer specializing in unconscious bias. In her classes, she used an anonymized version of her own story as a powerful teaching tool. "I thought I was following procedure," she would tell her students, "but I was really just following my own prejudice." The first step to changing the world is to be brave enough to change your own mind. Mark Jenkins was hired by an aviation consulting firm. His unique, first-hand experience of causing a billion-dollar corporate crisis gave him a credibility with skeptical executives that no textbook ever could. He became an unlikely but passionate advocate for cultural reform. Captain Liam Evans, his promotion made permanent, was now a mentor for the new scholarship students. He never forgot the lesson of that morning. That true leadership wasn't about the stripes on your shoulder, but the integrity in your heart. And Vice President Imani Blake? She was rarely seen in the public eye. She worked tirelessly behind the scenes, implementing the complex machinery of change. Her victory hadn't been emotional. It had been architectural. She hadn't just won a battle. She had redesigned the entire battlefield. Her greatest satisfaction came not from board meetings or stock prices, but from the quiet moments. It came from seeing a young black woman in a first officer's uniform walk confidently through the terminal, unchallenged. It came from reading a passenger's email praising a gate agent for handling a difficult situation with grace and respect. The story of that morning became a legend within the airline, a reminder that change doesn't always come from loud protests, but sometimes from quiet preparation, unshakable professionalism, and the courage to hold a mirror up to an entire system. Chloe Chun ended her live stream, her final message resonating with the hundreds of thousands watching. What happened here proves that our voices, our cameras, our demands for accountability matter. The institutions that serve us are not unchangeable. Document what you see. Speak up against injustice. Comment with respect below and share your own stories. Because sometimes all it takes is one person in one moment to remind the world that the arc of the moral universe doesn't bend on its own. We have to bend it.